So I'd love to shift gears a little bit. We talked a little bit about getting from a pre $10 million ARR mark, or at least that being the line in the sand, to how do you scale from there. I'd love to talk about more about the people side, which I think you referenced earlier as well. Right? I think there's two aspects to this part of the conversation, to me at least. Right? One is, as you said, you have people who are, let's call them legacy employees. Right? They've been there for a long time. They're very familiar, arguably comfortable with the way that things have been operating. A lot of that now has to change in subtle or overt ways, depending on what the change is as you continue to scale up. So part A of my question is kind of how do you manage those people, right? How do you do that assessment of, at a very kind of crass level almost, can these people scale with us, right?
Mhm.
I think that's frankly math that a lot of investors are doing about the executive board, and the executives need to do about the employees that work for them as well. But two, how do you, when you're looking at bringing in new members to the team as well, what are you looking for in terms of the general criteria that will help a person be successful, going along that journey from say 10 million to 100 million with you?
Yeah. Yeah. When you're sort of sequencing as a product leader, the different steps that you need to take to help scale the company. First is vision. We talked about it. We didn't talk about big bets that much. It's just your strategy, right? Like, so you know where you're trying to get to. What are the sort of big bets you're trying to make in order for you to get there, sustain short-term growth, and also set you up for long-term success. Really, the third is team architecture. And I'm combining the people that you need with the way that you have them organized. So probably the situation that you're walking into as a product leader at a company, something like that, at that stage is, yeah, you have people who are grown, sort of homegrown people. They probably didn't have any sort of product experience.
Mhm.
They were in supporting roles or engineering roles, potentially even, or implementation. And they had opinions about the product. They didn't understand the customers really well.
Mhm.
And they sort of adopted that role. It's how I got into product. I was in support. I started voicing that, hey, I actually care about this. And they hired me into my first product role. Great. There's definitely a inherent knowledge that they have, what worked, what didn't work. They know the customers really, really well, sometimes on a first name basis. And that there's a ton of value there. What starts to happen as you're scaling, the biggest change that I've seen, and Brian, I'm going to ask you the same question as well, just curious
Sure.
what you saw. But the biggest thing that I started to see is you kind of start to move away from generalists into specialists. Like, for example, if I early on, was looking to bring on somebody on board from a technical PM or an integrations PM. And that's not something that you want to teach to somebody. You're like,
Yeah.
no, I want opinions
Yep.
grounded in market demands. It's the same for mostly everybody.
Mhm.
I'm going to bring in a specialist. So that's one of the big changes that I saw, and I've noticed through the 2-3 scaling journeys that I've done, is sort of the need to start moving away from generalists. That's not to say that they don't have a role, but to start sort of bringing in specialists and really explaining it to the team. Like, look, the reason we are bringing this person is A, we need the expertise, and B, we don't have time, for example, to train this expertise to somebody. So at least your team sort of understands the what and why behind the change. And then the things that I look for in the people that are there, performance and potential, always kind of this matrix that I try to benchmark everybody against.
Mhm.
Are they fulfilling the roles that you would expect in the market at the stage that your company is at for somebody who has that title? Because, bloated titles is a problem,
Yep.
especially for early stage startups, because, you're not paying a lot of money. So you kind of give people big titles, but
Mhm.
then you sort of bring in a specialist, a principal, a senior PM, and so on, and they're kind of at the same level, and they're like, what's going on, right? Like, it's
Yep.
what's happening there.
Yep.
So certainly that's something. And then potential, it's you are, as a product leader, you're going to be implementing a rhythm. You're moving from gut check to data driven. And those two extremes, that's a journey that doesn't come naturally to a lot of people because they had to be sort of quick decisions and, hey, I need to get this ball rolling, unblock this customer and so on. But now you're asking them to actually see trends and assess market feedback and then make decisions based on that and then sort of try to prove it down the line as well. Hey, did we achieve what we said we'd achieve?
Mm-hmm.
And the third one is I look for system builders, especially in a B2B SaaS environment, not looking for feature builders. I need somebody to see the bigger picture and has the potential to see the bigger picture and see their role within it and in making it work and in expanding it as well. Yeah, what's been your experience?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think a lot of what you said, I would also second. Two other things I would add kind of as complementary experiences I've had. One, I tend to look at, I'll focus this on product managers just for sake of argument. Like the way to be a good product manager is not to be exactly the same profile, copied and pasted from person to person, right? I think there's dimensions in which you need to show strength. I probably could list a lot of them, but industry knowledge, technology knowledge, specific company know-how, right? Just, understanding of tribal knowledge, right? There's, as long as you are over-indexing on arguably at least one of those, I think you have the foundation to be a good PM at a lot of companies. So that's kind of thing one that I've learned to look for, right? Is there something that you're exceptional at? If you're like okay at everything, arguably you can go and find a specialist, to your point, to give you more outsized value. But if you can at least demonstrate, exceptional ability in one of the areas, that was helpful. And then, but going along with that, the second thing, which I think is non-negotiable to me, particularly in the scenarios that we're talking about of, growth and cultural changes, are you willing to change? Like some people will call that, a growth mentality, right? You can be an exceptional PM, but if you are not willing to take feedback, do anything differently, grow with the company through its growing pains, like it's just not going to work, right? So I think the people that I've seen a lot of success with are really good at least one thing, and we're really, excited to learn more, do things differently, change their skill set, maybe even change their job title in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I think about, and I'll use a bit of an oddball reference here, but it really I do think about this a lot genuinely. I don't know how familiar you are with the mid '90s San Antonio Spurs basketball teams, but they were championship teams at least several times over, if memory serves, and they had Dennis Rodman on the team, who was notorious weirdo. And I recall reading an interview with Greg Popovich, their coach, as to like how do you win with this weird character on your team when the rest of the team is so straight laced and even keeled and whatever it may be. And his response effectively was mix, right? We can get away with a Dennis Rodman because everybody else is very straight edged and plays within the team rules. But if we had two Dennis Rodmans, we'd be in big trouble, right? And I kind of think about that as well. Obviously, I'm not usually hiring Dennis Rodmans onto my team, but to me, it is about mix, right? What can I, this person isn't great with interpersonal skills, whatever. Fine. I can't have a whole team of people that are like that. I can have one person, and we can make up for it, from a combined team cultural perspective by having people who reinforce that skill, and then ideally, as a leader, you put them into the same room, same situation, so that the Dennis Rodman character can learn, or at least be held in line by some of the other people. But so I think there's a lot of dimensions on which that applies, but it's hard to get that right. But I think the sense of, do we have a a core of what defines our team, right? We are the San Antonio Spurs in XYZ ways. Yeah, some people don't 100% comply with that. Some people don't have exactly the same skill set, but they at least have enough reference back to that core that there's a connection point, and we can grow with them. So maybe that got a little too obscure, but I think
No. I think
yeah. Good.
I thought it was great. I mean, I'm more familiar with Dennis Rodman during his North Korea friendship days than this Spurs days. That's a whole other thing. We won't get into that. But I think what you said is especially really A, I agree with everything that you said, and B, I think it's for your listeners who may be in the job market right now, right? Like a senior PM, for instance, and they're maybe discouraged about not hearing back or going in pretty far in an interview round and not getting selected, and they're like, why? I'm a senior PM. What's the what is it that I'm missing? And I've spoken to a lot of them over the last few weeks and months, and a senior PM is not a senior PM is not a senior PM, just as you said, right? Like I'll use an example from an enable perspective. When I joined, the company was doing 6-week planning in terms of product. There was no visibility beyond that, actually. So if the story I tell people is, if the engineering came and said, hey, this thing that we thought is going to take 6 weeks is actually 2 weeks, it wasn't good news, because we're like, what are we going to replace it with? Like, there was no work really to sort of have it filled up with. So one of the 2 senior PMs I hired very early on, one of them was extremely market focused. I said, I need somebody who is, yes, senior PM, but really great at discovery and market validation and so on. I don't need them to be great at delivery of product. It's not the persona that I want. Right now I need runway. I need to help create runway, basically. And then the other senior PM that I hired, maybe within a week of this person, was complete opposite. Like, here I have an area that I do have. We have a very good understanding of what we're trying to make, but I need execution excellence, right? I need somebody who sits down with the customers and does the design validations, works with engineering, and is able to hit deliverables that we set out and learn from them and kind of move on. So yeah, really read the job description and see what it is that the company is looking for. And I couldn't agree with you more on the core that brings everybody together. The thing that we had was, we had a set of team values, actually. The company had its own values. We had a set of team values, and we said, we are a big diversity of team members, regions, experiences, backgrounds, and expertise. But the things that we care about as a team, and really the values that we sort of try to find, that trying to coalesce around, are these core values. And sometimes you do need a Dennis Rodman on your team to just kind of shake things up and bring a different opinion on it. But yeah, as long as that the core value is the same, I think the team can be high performing and cohesive.
Yeah, I think you're talking to a level of awareness about certainly nuance of skill set and capability within a role, but also just a deeper understanding of how do you compose a team thoughtfully, right? Which I tend to get a lot of my inspiration on that topic from sports, right? Because I think, you have defined different positions that have, ways of interfacing, and that is something that, coaches and general managers talk a lot about, think a lot about. I find that it is discussed, for whatever reason, far less in business, or maybe I'm just not exposed to the right, people and books and what have you. But I've inherited so many situations over the years where, hiring has gone on for years in a lot of cases, with the perception that, like, there's only one job profile for a PM. There's only one job profile for a UX UI designer, right? Everybody must look the same. Often it's, templated off of whoever the person that was successful, in previous years looked like. We need to hire more of that person, right? So just go get 5 more of that person. And that often becomes very counterproductive, because in a lot of these cases, the person that was successful, particularly at these like early stage companies when things were chaos, was somebody that kind of was smart enough to skirt around the rules, find ways to just, get shit done. And then you hire 5 people that are just getting shit done constantly. It turns into absolute chaos, right? Like, you need people to enforce structure and scalability and, think about the long term, right? Again, you can have a couple people thinking about, how do I just get shit done? But, like, you do not organically move from that into, a mature, composed, sustainable company, in my experience, at least. So I think, I can't even think about how many conversations I've had with C-suite executives, CEOs, just to say, like, by the way, there's such a thing as a growth PM, for example, right? We don't have anybody on the team who has that skill set. Here's what that looks like. Here's what we need to hire for. And it's just like this, but we already hired PMs. Why do I need that? Like, I find that to be a very essential, but often a bit head scratching, kind of on both sides. Conversation to be had. It's curious to me. A lot of it feels like it's maybe boiling down to just obscurity of job titles, right? If they had very
Yeah.
different titles, maybe it would be a lot easier for people to wrap their head around.
And PM, just in general,
Yep.
it's just an obscure role to begin with. Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. And then there's this, I'm going to just add another layer, just kind of going back to the scaling, right? Like you're 10 million, you have like a bunch of generalists, and they own maybe different modules probably of your product, and kind of doing their own thing and dealing with customer requests and so on. So we talked a lot about how the profile might be different and how what you look for might be different. But the thing that also, kind of just to borrow your sports analogy, it's how the topology of your team really matters as well. Because yeah, you have different players. Some of them are more physical. Some of them are, kind of game builders and so on. Some of them are great at defense. You set them up differently depending on the type of a team that you're facing. Product teams as well, you set up your organization in a way, sometimes usually it becomes kind of portfolio based. Hey, you own these products, you three own those other products, and so on. And that's certainly how I've set up teams as well, because a portfolio model made sense at a certain point. But what organizations, kind of scaling organizations and product leaders need to be aware of is that, guess what your architecture is going to look like when you have three different groups that own three different things. That's what your architecture is going to look like. Your architecture is going to end up mirroring what your organizational structure looks like and how these teams kind of work together and talk to one another. So really setting up these groups in a way to kind of mimic the architecture that you want, really, whether it's value streams, whether it's like a platform and kind of solutions kind of a model, or something else. And then setting them up differently, right? Like, so you talked about a growth PM. A growth PM may not need a team of 10 developers and like DevOps like kind of built into it and so on. No, you want an experimentation, agile team, 2-3 devs, maybe one UX designer and so on. So I see a lot of CEOs, acting CPOs, kind of, and so on, who are like, no, I want to be able to take this person from this group and put it in that group, and I want them to be successful right away. Yep, there's definitely merit to that. But in order to get the best out of your groups and what they're trying to achieve, you got to make sure that the team topology actually supports the outcome that they're trying to achieve as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're operating in that mentality of interchangeability, I don't know how to navigate that personally, at least without having to accept some level of, decreased standards, right? And efficiency. Exactly. Yeah. Which, if situations like maybe hiring is a really complex challenge for your organization, maybe that makes sense because the cost of going out and trying to get a specialist is, exorbitantly high compared to just shifting somebody in and, accepting the lower standards. But yeah, I mean, it's to the point of this conversation, I think very difficult to scale your company dramatically with, with people who are not truly experts in their roles. I'd love to leave with a couple of wrap-up questions. We're coming up on time here, but really great conversation and insights from you so far. So if you can sum up a little bit for any product leaders that are stepping into, the situation that we talked about, you're at a give or take $10 million ARR company. What are the, 2-3 things that you would really urge them to focus on, right, over, let's call it the next 90 to 180 days?
Yeah, I think first, try to understand the company and the dynamic and the market and the customer. Try speak to as many people as you can within the organization and as customers and prospects and so on. Then in terms of kind of starting to put steer the ship in the right direction, be aware that this is a marathon, this is not a sprint, and it's actually a never-ending marathon, because once you get to a particular place, then it's a whole other set of things that you need to do.
Yep.
But the sequence that I like for product leaders to think about and follow for their organization, and each of these steps might be at different stages, for their company is the vision. Do you have something compelling? Is it dormant? Meaning, is it just in a slide deck, or is it something that actually is a root of decision making or not? So the visions. Assess your big bets. So this is your product strategy, basically. It's like, hey, what are you trying to achieve over the next 6 months, 1 year, 18 months? Your team architecture. We talked a lot about this. Do you have the right players? Are they set up in a way that they can be successful as people and for your organizational products and so on? Process and tooling. Do you have the right processes? And I put processes after people because you don't want to design processes for your sort of weakest people within the organization. You want to set it up actually for your success, for your strongest players to be successful. And then finally the roadmap. That's really the sort of the last things, like, hey, based on vision, big bets, architecture, processes that we have, how are we going to deliver on the products and outcomes that we want? So that's what I would recommend the most. And it does take time. Hedge your bets on smaller wins to just get the ball rolling, get the flywheel moving. And don't forget to bring people along for the journey with you.
Yeah. Well put, and I think very, very, very practical. I'll leave you with one last, maybe a little bit provocative question. What's one thing in product leadership that you feel like you haven't yet figured out, or that keeps you up at night?
Oh, that's a good question. The thing that I've never found a good answer for this, because and more and more I'm thinking there may not be a good answer for this. And I'm gonna ask you this question because maybe, Brian, you'll give me the good answer to this question. When you're in B2B SaaS product leadership, you will have a big account that will come along, and there is a set of things that they need that they will derail the roadmap, and there is no math for you to say a definitive yes or no on should we proceed with this or should we not proceed with this. There's just gradients. So you're like, hey, do I sacrifice short-term sort of successes, maybe hitting the quarterly numbers, which then kind of has the board kind of pushing down on you, is like, hey, what's going to happen? Or do I kind of sacrifice or delay the strategy or the vision, which has a projected kind of outcome that you're trying to achieve? But I would love for there to be a formula, that you just plug in and get an answer out. And, there are ways of figuring out how much the cost is going to be of maintaining this customer and whatnot, but it's never black and white, at least that I've seen. And I think that's just one area that I would like to be better at. And what I've personally started doing is just getting closer to sales and learning more around the sales methodologies and so on, and what that persona kind of thinks about and tries to operate as. But Brian, do you have this answer for me? Is there a formula?
I don't have a formula for you. If I have any shred of insight on this, I think it's this, which is I spent the initial years of my career out of college as a business analyst, primarily doing a lot of efficiency work and contract negotiation, things like that. So in that capacity was dealing with a lot of clients or suppliers that, wanted things from us, not product, enhancements, but aspects, of their contract to be changed, for example. One of the things I learned during that time with that experience was it is often very obscure to external people, external to your company, what's easy for you or what's hard for you to do, right? I think either in the context of, adjustments to a contract, but also I think in the context of building software, right? Things that seem immensely difficult are often very technically easy to do, and vice versa, right? So if we're looking at this from the lens of just, to some extent, how do I keep my client happy? How do I make sure that we, appropriately, for lack of a better word, use internal company resources? One of the kind of tricks there, and I think it is a trick on some level, but really was to kind of present everything as almost equivalent, right? This super easy thing internally, gosh, I don't know. I'll have to go, do a lot of work and figure out whether we can do this and, escalate up to the CEO and blah, 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 and then a week later come back and say, well, gosh, I can't do the thing that's actually really hard for us internally, but I really, went to bat for you and did all this and blah, blah. And guess what? I could do this thing that for us is 5 seconds of work, but I'm going to position it to you as like, I really, I'm doing my absolute best for you, right? And often my experience there was like the company would be like, oh, wow, thank you so much. Like, we're really appreciative of you doing this, right? And I don't think you can get away with doing that like as your default way of business. That's a little bit deceitful. But my point being, like, I think there's a time and a place to use kind of the obscurity to your advantage there, and to make sure that, you buy yourself the time to thoughtfully plan the requests that do have value but are immensely difficult to execute on, and like not put yourself in that time crunch while, still positioning the things that are super easy for you to get done, like as gifts, right? Very, very, nicely packaged, difficult things that are actually pretty easy. So I don't. That's the best insight that I have for you there.
That's good advice.
Trick your customers. That's not what I'm saying. Anyway, well, Meraj, thank you so much. It's been a fantastic conversation, a lot of insight. I really hope everybody gets something, at least from this, that they had not thought about before. And would you like to share with everybody where they can find you if they would like to?
Yeah, Brian, it was a great conversation. And I'm sort of starting to focus a lot more on content. So my Substack, my Medium profiles are both available. You can search my name and they should come up. Add me on LinkedIn, and I'm always curious about what's happening in the space. Just drop me a message, and if you have challenges, you just want to bounce ideas, always curious what's happening in the market, and if there are ways I can help, I'd be happy to.
Great. Meraj Imani, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.